That tightening in your chest during a stressful afternoon isn't just a mood. It's a chemical alarm that is currently melting the protective insulation off your auditory nerves. You felt it before. You're stuck in traffic or dealing with a mounting pile of bills, and suddenly that faint background hiss in your ears begins to sharpen into a jagged, piercing scream. This isn't just a coincidence of timing. What you're experiencing is the biological activation of the cortisol kill switch. When your brain perceives a threat, it floods your system with stress hormones that were designed to help you fight off a predator. But in the modern world, those same chemicals act like a slow drip acid on the delicate wiring of your inner ear. This surge of cortisol doesn't just make the sound louder for a few minutes. It triggers a cascade of neurogenic inflammation that can effectively lock that ringing into a permanent state. You are witnessing a real-time erosion of your neural shield. And if you don't intervene, your brain will eventually decide that this phantom noise is a vital signal it must never stop broadcasting. It's a terrifying realization that the very system meant to protect you is now the one generating the static that ruins your peace. The problem lies in the way cortisol interacts with the myelin sheath, that fatty coating we've discussed that keeps your nerve signals contained. Think of your auditory nerve as a high-voltage cable running through a damp basement. As long as the rubber insulation is thick and intact, the electricity stays where it belongs. But cortisol is a master at breaking down fats to create quick energy for the body. When you stay stressed for days or weeks at a time, your body begins to scavenge its own neural insulation to keep the stress engine running. This leaves your auditory nerve exposed, raw, and prone to electrical leakage. This leakage is exactly what you hear as tinnitus. It's the sound of sparks jumping between wires that were never meant to touch. The longer the insulation stays thin, the more the brain rewires itself to accept this chaotic noise as the new normal. You aren't just hearing a ghost sound. You are hearing the actual physical degradation of your nervous system's ability to contain its own energy. Cortisol also has a devastating effect on the blood flow to your cochlea. During a stress response, your body prioritizes blood for your muscles and heart, shunting it away from non-essential organs like your inner ear. This creates a state of chronic micro-ischemia. Your auditory hair cells, which are already struggling to survive, are suddenly starved of oxygen and nutrients at the exact moment they are being hammered by stress-induced electrical surges. It's a double tap to your hearing health. You are overworking the nerve while cutting off its fuel supply. This is why many people notice their ringing becoming thick or heavy during periods of grief or high-pressure work. Your ears are literally suffocating in a sea of stress hormones, while the demand for performance stays at an all-time high. If you're feeling that pressure building up behind your eardrum right now, it's a sign that the inflammation has already reached a critical threshold. You can see the exact steps to flush these corrosive hormones out of your system and begin the re-insulation process by clicking the recovery link in the description and the pinned comment below. There is a terrifying mechanism called central sensitization that happens when cortisol stays high for too long. Your brain has a built-in volume knob called the gain control. Under normal conditions, your brain filters out 99% of internal bodily noise. But when the cortisol kill switch is flipped, the brain enters a state of hypervigilance. It starts looking for threats everywhere, including inside your own head. It interprets the faint electrical hum of your nervous system as a danger signal and turns the volume up to maximum to make sure you hear the threat. This is how a temporary spike becomes a permanent nightmare. Once the brain's gain control gets stuck at 10, it stays there even after the stressor is gone. You've effectively trained your brain to be an expert at hearing the ringing. It becomes a self-sustaining loop of anxiety and noise that feeds on itself, making every quiet moment feel like an assault. We have to look at the role of glutamate during these stress spikes. Cortisol increases the release of glutamate in the auditory cortex and the cochlear nucleus. While glutamate is necessary for sending signals between neurons, an excess of it is neurotoxic. It overexcites the synapses until they literally burn out. This is known as excitotoxicity. When you're stressed, your inner ear is essentially experiencing a chemical fire. This fire destroys the synaptic ribbons that connect your hair cells to the brain. Once those connections are severed, the brain loses its clear input from the outside world and tries to compensate by creating its own sound. It's like a radio that can't find a station, so it just blasts static at full volume. The stress isn't just making you notice the sound more. It is physically altering the hardware of your hearing system to ensure the sound never stops. The most dangerous part of this cycle is that tinnitus itself is a massive stressor. You hear the noise, which causes your body to release more cortisol, which then degrades more of your neural insulation, making the noise even louder. It's a downward spiral that leads to what doctors call limbic system entrapment. Your emotional brain and your auditory brain become fused together. The ringing isn't just a sound anymore. It's a trigger for a full-blown fight or flight response. This constant state of emergency prevents the body from ever entering repair mode. You cannot heal a nerve that is constantly being electrocuted by stress chemicals. To break this entrapment, you have to provide the body with a chemical override, a specific set of lipophilic nutrients that can force the inflammation to subside and allow the myelin sheath to thicken again. You can find the specific strategy to disarm this cortisol loop at the link below this video. Many people try to manage this with relaxation techniques or white noise machines, but those are just bandages on a gashing wound. If the cortisol is still actively eating your neural insulation, no amount of calming music is going to stop the physical decay of the nerve. You have to address the metabolic reality of what's happening in your ear. You need to replenish the magnesium and the fat-soluble B vitamins that cortisol aggressively flushes out of your system. Think of magnesium as the gatekeeper of your nerve cells. When it's gone, the calcium channels stay wide open, and the cells stay in a state of permanent excitation, firing off signals like a broken alarm bell. Stress is a magnesium drainer, and without it, your auditory nerve has no way to turn off. Rebuilding that magnesium barrier is the first step in silencing the alarm and giving your brain the silence it craves. The inflammation caused by stress is neurogenic, meaning it's triggered by the nerves themselves, not by an external injury or infection. This makes it incredibly hard to detect with standard medical tests. Your doctor might look in your ear and see nothing wrong, but on a microscopic level, your auditory nerve is swollen and red. This swelling puts physical pressure on the nerve fibers, further distorting the signals reaching your brain. It's like trying to listen to a radio station during a massive lightning storm. The static is all you can hear. By reducing this internal nerve swelling, you give the brain its first chance in months to recalibrate its volume settings. You move from a state of emergency hearing back to baseline hearing. This is about physical structural integrity, not just mental calmness. The feeling of fullness or pressure in the ear during a stress spike is often the result of the eustachian tube reacting to the tension in your jaw and neck muscles, which are all tied to the same stress response. This physical tension creates a vacuum effect that amplifies the internal sounds of your body. You start hearing your own heartbeat, your own breathing, and the screeching of your uninsulated nerves. It creates a claustrophobic sensation, like being trapped inside a bell that someone is constantly hitting. This isn't a problem with your ears. It's a problem with your system's inability to regulate its own tension under the weight of cortisol. When you provide the right neural lubricants, the muscles relax, the pressure equalizes, and the soundproofing of your inner ear begins to return. It takes a dedicated window of time to reverse a centralized tinnitus signal. You can't expect the kill switch to flip back to off overnight if you've been in a state of high stress for years. However, the body is remarkably resilient if you give it the specific building blocks it needs. You have to provide a steady stream of the materials required to patch the holes in the myelin sheath. Once the holes are patched, the sparking stops. Once the sparking stops, the brain realizes the threat is over and begins to turn down the gain control. It's a slow, steady process of retraining your nervous system to accept silence again. To learn how to stage this intervention so your brain can finally let go of the ringing, you should access the full restoration protocol through the description link. The connection between your gut and your ears is also heavily influenced by cortisol. Stress ruins your gut's ability to absorb the very nutrients your ears need to stay quiet. If your digestion is compromised by chronic anxiety, you can take all the supplements in the world, and they'll never reach your auditory nerve. This is why a systemic approach is so important. You have to heal the delivery system while you're healing the nerve itself. You have to move your body out of a state of survival and into a state of regeneration. This shift is the secret to making the silence last. It's not about curing a sound. It's about restoring the biological environment that allows silence to exist. We also have to look at the fear of the sound. When you believe the ringing is a sign of permanent damage or a tumor, your cortisol levels stay even higher. This fear is actually what makes the sound permanent. The brain treats the noise as a predator, and you don't ignore a predator. Rebuilding the neural shield gives you the physical proof that your ears are getting stronger. When the volume starts to drop, even by 10%, the fear begins to lift. This lowers your cortisol, which allows for even more repair, creating a virtuous cycle of healing. You move from being a victim of the noise to being the architect of your own silence. You are literally building a wall between your consciousness and the noise. Observe your ears during your next stressful meeting or argument. Notice how the pitch changes, or the volume rises. That is the cortisol kill switch in action. It is a direct signal that your neural insulation is currently under attack. You don't have to accept this as your permanent reality. You can choose to provide the coolant and the shielding that will stop the chemical fire and let your nerves rest. You have the power to force the brain to turn the volume knob back down to 0. The silence is still there, waiting under the layers of inflammation and stress. You can start the process of reclaiming it by following the repair strategy in the pinned comment or the description below. The window for neuroplastic repair is always open, but every day you spend in a cortisol-driven spike is a day you are reinforcing the permanence of the sound. The moment you start the restoration process, the neurogenic inflammation begins to recede, the synapses start to stabilize, and the kill switch begins to lose its power over your life. You can reclaim your focus and your peace of mind. It's time to stop letting a stressful life destroy your auditory wiring. Fix the shield, quench the inflammation, and finally find the quiet you've been looking for. Take the first step toward a resilient, silent mind by visiting the link and starting the protocol now. Your ears are ready for the static to stop. Imagine the relief of waking up and not checking for the sound immediately. That silence isn't a gift. It's a physiological state that you can earn back. Every cell in your auditory cortex is waiting for the signal to calm down. When you provide the right fat-soluble environment, the myelin starts to wrap around those exposed fibers like a soothing blanket. The heat dissipates. The phantom sparks fade. You begin to hear the world again, not through a veil of noise, but with the crisp clarity you remember from years ago. This isn't just about hearing. It's about the cognitive energy you get back when you aren't fighting a ghost every waking hour. The science of auditory recovery has moved beyond simple sound masking. We now know that the brain is plastic and can be retaught to ignore the internal hum, but only if the hardware is stable. If the nerve is still raw, the brain will always prioritize that signal. It's a survival instinct. You have to convince the brain that the war is over. By flooding the stria vascularis with oxygen and the neural sheath with protective lipids, you send a biological message of safety. This message is more powerful than any meditation or white noise machine. It is the language of the cells themselves. Think about the long-term impact on your cognitive health. Chronic tinnitus and the stress that drives it are linked to memory issues and brain fog. This happens because your brain is using so much processing power to manage the noise that it has nothing left for your life. Reclaiming your hearing is actually about reclaiming your brain. It's about ensuring your golden years are spent in focus, not in a frantic search for quiet. The investment you make in your neural insulation today is an investment in your mental sharpness for the next 20 or 30 years. You might have been told that you just have to live with it. That is the most destructive lie in modern medicine. While there may not be a pill that stops the sound instantly, there is absolutely a biological pathway to making the sound irrelevant to your brain. You are a biological system, and every system has a repair mechanism. Your job is to provide the raw materials and stop the cortisol from burning them all away. The path to silence is a path of restoration, not suppression. As you move through your day, keep a mental log of when the sound shifts. You'll start to see the patterns. You'll see the direct link between your metabolic stress and your auditory static. This awareness is your first weapon. Once you see the enemy, you can target it. You can stop being surprised by the spikes and start anticipating them with the right protective measures. You are in control of your neural environment. The static is loud, but your biology is louder. Every sip of water, every nutrient-dense meal, and every moment of deliberate nerve repair is a strike against the permanent noise. You are rebuilding a masterpiece of evolutionary engineering. Your hearing. Don't let the weight of the world's stress crush those delicate fibers. You have the tools, you have the science, and now you have the plan. The quiet is waiting. It's time to go and get it. Take the recovery steps seriously, and watch how your world transforms when the background screaming finally dies down.